The town square of Logtown soon turned into a furious battlefield. Sanji, Zoro, and Vulko had made their way there in search for Luffy as commotion was starting to make way through the town, the Marines beginning to mobilize. Buggy and Alvida's combined crews also were making their move in hopes of taking down the Straw Hat, and the Marines were already grouping into base. And on top of the execution tower, the place where the last king of the pirates met his end, Luffy and Smoker would come to trade blows. Smoker with his Jete staff, and Luffy with his trident. So, you are a trident wielder. You must have had training from one of the Atlanteans. You could say something like that. Luffy would back away at the last second as he got into a defensive stance with his trident. Smoker, even with just a little bit of the rain, it wasn't so much that it would impede him using his devil fruit ability, the smoke fruit. As Luffy went in for a slash with the trident, Smoker would make his body intangible with smoke at that moment, before attempting to wrap around and get Luffy into a submission hold. However, Luffy was more than capable of breaking free of the grasp out of Smoker, as the two of them would continue their fight. Out of all the people that the captain had come across, he had never met someone as tenacious as Luffy before. Sure, there were guys with moxie and bravado, but it never got very far. Smoker believed in overwhelming dominant force. That was how he ran his ship, and it's how he dealt with pirates. However, this boy, he seemingly had a way to counter everything he could do. The way he fought, the way he was able to hold his own. He was definitely not one to be taken lightly. And as they continued to fight, there was this growing feeling that kept creeping inside of Smoker. He felt like this was more than just an ordinary fight with some upstart pirate crew. No, he felt like this point in time, this was the point in time where key decisions had to be made, where the course of today might potentially affect all of history. Something that might seem as insignificant as this could end up having astronomical effects. For Smoker, he didn't want to think of those possibilities, of what type of world could potentially come from this encounter. No. He had to bring in the Straw Hat. He had to stop whatever this was. He couldn't quite describe it. He couldn't put a name on it. Even if he tried, even if you gave him every word in the dictionary, he could never fully comprehend this feeling and moment, as if the very world itself hung in the balance, as if they were on scales that were teetering back and forth. It felt as though all the pressure was on his shoulders. He didn't like this feeling. It was something he had never felt in a long time, and yet this boy was making him feel it. He was making him feel every blow, every strike, every attack. He was making him contemplate, second guess, triple guess his next moves. What was it about this Straw Hat boy? What made him the way that he was? Why did he give off this gravity? A gravity he hadn't felt since he was but a young child. You see, for many people who had seen the execution of Goldie Roger, Smoker was one of them. He was but a young boy in the crowd, but he remembered watching the King of the Pirates walk down the street. And yet, even when he was being walked to the gallows, even when he was being walked to his certain demise, he had a smile on his face. It felt as though he were in control of the whole situation, as if he were the master of his own fate and no one realized it. For the Marines, that day of Gold D. Rogers' death, it was supposed to serve as the ultimate deterrent. It was supposed to serve as a way of showing that even the best of the best could be taken down. And if you weren't as good as Gold D. Roger, you shouldn't even bother trying to be a pirate. No, that day was supposed to mark the end of the pirate era. But yet his death only sparked a new one. Was this the product of that spark that came all those years ago? Was this boy the ultimate product of the great pirate era? As if the embodiment of Gold D. Roger stood in front of him at this very moment. An overwhelming force. A being who could really change the world. Something that had to be quelled. And yet Smoker wondered in that moment, was he the one? Was he capable of quelling such a fire? Could he really put it out? He had to. There was no other choice. It was his duty. It's what he took this role for. It's why he became a captain. No, this boy could not be the second coming. He could not be the next. He was just another upstart, like every other one that came before him. And like every other upstart, he would be struck down in this moment. However, that wouldn't come to pass. Even when Smoker had managed to corner Luffy, managing to restrain him and was looking to slap on the cuffs, he would be stopped. A man in a cloak. He could hardly be seen save for the scars on one side of his face. The man's interference was just long enough for Luffy to break free and to get away, creating distance between them as he rallied behind with his crew as they dashed towards the docks where the Going Merry was, looking to make their escape. You. And just what the hell are you doing here? Why are you getting involved? I'm merely fulfilling my duty and a promise to the woman that I loved. With that, before Smoker could even have a chance to strike, the hooded figure would disappear. You've done well. Now, Luffy, let's see what you can do in the Grand Line. Head off. Show the world who you truly are. For Smoker, he knew who the man was that interfered. But why? Why had he interfered now? What was going on? No, this wasn't a coincidence. He couldn't just shake this off. He couldn't let it go. Smoker would rally the Marines, having a full-on pursuit for the Straw Hats. Luffy and the gang would all arrive to the docks, Vulko running closely behind his young ward. And just what have you gotten yourself into this time, Luffy? I promise, it wasn't my fault. I just wanted to visit the gallows. Then that weird captain guy attacked me. Oh, great. Always getting into something, Sanji would say as he carried a bag of groceries on his back. You're one to talk. What were you doing the whole time when he needed you? I'm the one who has to get food for the ship. I'm the cook. Yeah, nothing but a bunch of excuses. Coming from the guy that always gets lost all the time, Mosshead. What were you doing? Collecting jewelry? Shut up! It's not jewelry. What? It looks like a pretty expensive ring to me. You? Okay, that's enough, Vulko would say, all of them running for their lives. As Usopp and Nami were already waiting on the ship, they saw everyone barreling towards them, and the massive mob of pirates and marines that were closely following. Usopp would man the cannons and get into position, firing behind the group that made their way to the ship, hoping to create some distance for all of them as everyone would take their positions. The Going Merry was set off immediately, the Marines and the pirates all firing them from every which side. Zoro, just out of pure reaction, would stick his hand into the air, the hand that donned his newly worn green ring. And with that, a barrier of green energy formed around the Going Merry, protecting them from cannon fire and other attacks as they were pushed out of the docks and set off into the seas. They started moving and rowing with the ship as quickly as they could, getting out of there in a hurry. While the Marines would mobilize, Buggy would mobilize with his forces, all of them aiming after the Straw Hats. Thankfully, though, the crew managed to create some distance, managing to get far away from the port. Nami, with a key map that they needed to get out of the East Blue, would show them where they needed to go. Of course, it was going to be easier said than done, because the area they needed to get to was not one for the faint of heart. It was known as Reverse Mountain. It was a point on the Red Line. It was the only way to get into the Grand Line itself. A place you could say where all four parts of the four great oceans actually met. The North, the East, the South, and the West. All of them moving in a reverse formation, the waters racing up the mountain point before all dispersing into the Grand Line. Of course, you might assume this was the All Blue, but it wasn't quite. But Reverse Mountain had another infamous title. It was known as the Mountain of Dead Dreams. You see, even if you were brave enough to get through any one of the four great oceans, you've traversed the worst of what they've had to offer. And by some miracle, you make your way to Reverse Mountain. The ship was not guaranteed to survive the treacherous journey of moving up the mountain itself, crashing into the rocky sides on either one of the ship. And, in all likelihood, you could be destroyed. No, this was probably as dangerous of a part of the journey as you could get, because in one fell swoop, your journey could be over before it even started. Of course, everyone would prepare themselves as Nami guided them through the course of making their way through Reverse Mountain. As the waters began to rock the ship on either side, as they made their way to the multiple gates that surrounded the entryway through the East Blue, everyone manned their stations and took hold of their position, as the Going Merry would now traverse its way up the eastern side of Reverse Mountain. It was touch and go for a few moments, including some where the Going Merry was seemingly preparing to meet its end. However, in the end, they were able to steady themselves, and in a last burst, they made their way through to the center, before being swirled around and shot straight towards the Grand Line. Having survived the worst of the worst and seeing what lay before them, as the waters swirled around, as even rainfall began to pour upon them, standing all encircling a barrel, Luffy and the gang would all kick their feet high into the air before landing it down on top of the barrel, each one taking a drink in hand. This was a time-honored tradition for a pirate crew whenever they set off on an adventure, proclaiming their dreams out and before the great sea itself, a form of good luck, if you will. For Luffy, he declared he would be king of the pirates. For Zoro, he proclaimed he would become the world's strongest swordsman. For Nami, she would chart a map of the world. For Sanji, he would find the All Blue. For Usopp, he would become a brave warrior of the sea. And then there was Nudius Vulko, the man who had trained Luffy from his time as a young boy, who had watched him grow into the young man he was now. What was his dream? Did he even have one? Everyone looked to him. He looked to Luffy as he smiled. I've watched you grow into a young man, Luffy. You've taken hold of your life and how you want to live it. I can truly say without a shadow of a doubt, I'm proud of how far you've come. And I know that you can go even further. In terms of a dream, of a goal, I can't really say that I have one. I've lived a long life and I've seen many things. But I do have a promise. I promise that no matter where you go, I will always be with you. I will stand and fight beside you. And even if it costs me my life, I will see to it that you achieve everything and more. That all of you achieve your dreams. For you are all fine and admirable people. And I couldn't be prouder to be beside you all. To the grand line and all that awaits us, let us conquer the seas and find everything that this world has to offer. Everyone cheered in celebration of Vulko's words as the Going Merry went forth, reaching out into the grand line, a new adventure awaiting them. Wealth, fame, power. Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, obtained this and everything else that the world had to offer. His dying words, almost 20 years ago, living on into this very day, driving countless souls to the seas. My treasure is yours to find. I left everything in one piece. Now, you just have to find it. Those words drove countless souls to the seas, searching for the grand treasure. And now, the next generation takes their step forward. This is the story of a boy born to the sea. And unbeknownst to him, his destiny is to claim it. There are foes out there in the world, many of them with strange and unforeseen powers, all of whom vying for the same power of the world. But only the one who is truly worthy can become king of the sea. And the one who becomes king. This concludes One Piece, King of the Sea, What If Luffy Was Aquaman, Season 1, Part 8, the Season 1 finale. First and foremost, as we come to an end of a series, I always want to say thank you to everyone who has shown support with this series, who have liked it, who have engaged with it, and I hope you'll stay tuned for everything that's to come now and in the future. And stick around, because based off of how this series does, the views that it gets towards the end of the year and the end of 2023, that'll tell me just how much you guys will want to see it when we get to 2024. But anyway, stay tuned next week. We're going to be starting some new stories here on the channel, and stick around for everything else that's to come out now and in the future. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.